for the introduction. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. All right. Just to inform you, I cannot see the faces of you, so I'm able to see only my screen. So I can't read facial expressions. So I count on your audio input in case something is missing, or if you have a question, or yeah, you just want to add up something to what I'm going to say. So yeah, I will walk you through the next 20 to 25 minutes. And I use a title, Diversity is Capital, How to Raise It. By capital here, it's meant, and with big C, it's meant the human capital, which can be turned into financial capital. And why I use this word and put it together with diversity, there is a good reason. Every time when I'm talking to companies about diversity, or not every time, but most of the times I'm asked about what's the business case? Why should a company take money in their own hands in order to invest? What's the value add? And of course, in a society and in academia, there is a strong drive that diversity is a topic about equality. But in companies is a question of what's the business case behind implementing diversity. So that's why I phrase it like this. And there is capital, definitely, and we can raise it. And I hope I can convince you within this topic about the statement. Just to start somewhere, an outlook for you to understand how I'm going to drive this for the next minutes. So basically, I will start with the status quo. What are the facts and the numbers where we are today? And I brought numbers which are not only German numbers, not only from Germany. I make it a little bit larger. I have some numbers also from Europe. And in some cases, I make it even a bit larger. There are some global numbers. Then I will go through the second part of my talk, where I will go through the challenges I see in the tech industry and what are the opportunities. Just to start somewhere, the key question is why everybody talks about diversity and what are really the key drivers of diversity. And here there are 4 elements I see. And these elements are valid not only for Germany, they are valid for Europe, and they are valid for many other countries worldwide. Key number 1 driver is the globalization. We have the digitalization combined with AI. And we have the migration. It's a big migration we see worldwide. And on top of all these, we have a continuously increasing shortage of specialists, especially in the technical fields. IT is one of the key drivers, but not only. We see this shortage of specialists in some or other areas. So all these elements together combined are key drivers of diversity. Now a short picture or a short introduction, what really diversity is and what are the various diversity dimensions we are talking about. Today and here we are going to talk about gender diversity. It's crystal clear to me, but this is not a topic which is independent on all the other diversity dimensions, just to be aware of it. So the key statement here is that all our experiences we are having in life are reflected in various diversity dimensions. And in all these white boxes, you will find traits we are born with. They are kind of traits which are kind of visible. And yeah, these traits are not completed here because of space reason. There are some more, but just for you to have a flavor of it. So it's gender for sure, age, ethnical group, race, the sexual orientation, the income, disability, religion, and in this particular example, education. As I said, these are traits which we are kind of born with some minor exceptions here and there, but they are the visible traits. Now, there are some traits which are going to come in blue boxes, which we are gaining during our life. Those are values, personality, skills, and our ideology, how we look at the world. And all these, I put them in the center of the diversity dimensions, and I would combine them all into 3 words, and those are the so-called diversity of thought. The blue, the white boxes are those dimensions of diversity which are used usually for discrimination, and the real diversity happens in the center, in the diversity of thought. Now, coming to some numbers, I have here a map of Europe, and I brought an index. It's so-called a gender equality index, where 100 is a full equality. There are numbers from 2019. And before I start with this, I just want to say there are lots of numbers on the market. More and more organizations start collecting numbers to see where the world is standing. But all these numbers are not always easy to compare to each other because they have various criteria. In this particular example, the criteria are knowledge, power, work, time, health, and money. Here we can see on this map, there are 4 purple colors, starting between 50 and 60, where we have countries like Romania, Hungary, Poland, and some more. Then we have a little bit darker purple from 60 to 70, where it's Germany included, Italy, and Austria. Then the color gets a bit darker, and we have 70 to 80, this equality index, where we have countries like Spain, UK, and France. And we have with 80 plus, where Sweden definitely is leading the row in Europe. So what we can see is it's issue which we have avoided. I will come with some more numbers later on, and it varies depending on the culture we are in. The same picture one more time. Why I put this in here is one reason. I just want to show to you that between 2010 and 2015, there was a progress from an index of 63.8 to 66.2. There is some programs, but it's not that big. So basically, I would phrase it in a way that the progress is at a snail's pace. Even though there are lots of measures, activities which are done in entire Europe, in a society, by governments, as well as by corporations, the pace is still kind of slow. This slide, I still want to share it here, even though it's in German. Sorry about that, but didn't have time to translate it. But I will try to explain it. So basically, it's sharing the percentage of women in IT. So on the left-hand side of the picture, there are various countries where you see the percentage of women in IT fields, and we have here Bulgaria as top number 1 with 30.3% women in IT. Then we have Australia, 28%. We have Romania, 26.3%. And we have Germany with a 16.6% at position number 20. On the right-hand side of the picture, you see various big corporations like Apple, Google, Amazon, and Facebook. And it's sharing the same number, the IT jobs where women are in. And we see here, well, Apple is leading this row, 23%, Google 20%, and Amazon and Facebook are around 19%. If we know one thing, that a global population, wherever you look in every country is the same, we have a statistics of a little bit more than 50% women, and a little bit less than 50% male, then we know there is still some work to be done. Moving forward, a little bit more numbers. In this particular example, it's an international comparison from 2019. from the Albright report. Here are shared the percentage of women in the boards of the 30 biggest companies in their national index. And we see here United States with 27.8%, being position number 1. Well, Sweden is always a good top example. In Europe, it's 22.7, and coming to Germany, we have a 14.7%. It's not that high. Again, back if we think of 50-50 parity, where conversations nowadays are happening in Germany, we are far away from reaching that target. Now, coming to the key message of the talk, diversity is capital. What does it mean? And basically, there are lots of studies around what I'm going to share now. I will make it easier to be understood. Since I share so many numbers now, I will leave the numbers behind, but there are statements which are valid. So there are lots of studies sharing that when teams are diverse, and by diversity is meant the large scope of diversity with all the dimensions I have shared before, then we have a productivity increase and higher profits. This is one big value add. Then the second one is if companies want to access new markets and to have a global business, it's definitely a value add because you have a higher competence in this global management. And one which is the favorite of most of the tech companies, it's the fact that when you have global teams and diverse teams, the innovation will definitely increase. All these factors together will bring every company, if they look into the numbers and into the business case, as I just mentioned at the first place, at the beginning, that there is definitely a strategic competitive advantage for them if they go to invest into diversity, and that will make them stay on the market and be successful in long term. Now, coming to the second part of my talk, what are the challenges, why things are not moving as they should move? As I said, it's a snail pace right now, even though lots of measures are in place. And just to say from very beginning, diversity is an extremely complex topic because it's related to many various fields, and there is no interconnectivity between these fields. It's because it's so complex, I won't have time to go into the last detail, but just to take the top key 3 challenges I'm seeing in corporates. The first number 1 is the environment. Then we have neuroscience, and what I mean by this, I will explain to you in a few minutes. And the way how we lead, so the leadership skills of people in managerial functions. As Marta mentioned, I'm a physicist, so I like to take physics to explain things because physics is easy. So in this particular example, it's an experiment which everybody can do and everybody's convinced what the outcome is. If you have a glass of water where you have ice cubes inside, this is your system. If you have a warm environment, so you put this glass under the sun and leave it there for a while, you will see that the ice cubes will melt. If on the other side, you put this glass of water in a fridge or in a cold environment, you will either have it, depends on the temperature, of course, you either have it maintained as it is with water and ice cubes inside, or it, in worst case, it will be completely turned into ice. So the key message actually of this slide is that the environment drives the changes in any system. What is the system we have in corporates and in societies worldwide? It's a global system, and the system is called patriarchy. It's a system of social structures, and I brought here an example of a professor of sociology from UK, Sylvia, Teresa Welby. She studied all these fields of gender relations in workplace and violence and the patriarchy, and she has a very simple sentence which describes how the patriarchy works. It's a system of social structure and practices in which men dominate, oppress, and exploit women. I have to say, when I read first time this sentence, I had a very hard time with the sentence, because I said, wow, it's not that terrible as it's written in this one sentence. And I spent lots of time to read her studies and her science, to accept it and understand it. And I think the key message is here to understand that she's describing this sentence as a system, as a social system. And the problem is not men, the problem is the structure of the system. And the three key elements of the system are dominance, oppression, and exploitation. And all the three elements are not only valid for women, they could be valid also for men, but it depends on the environment. The consequences of the system we are in, I brought here only examples from Germany, but these numbers exist in almost every country. The gender-based pay gap, that's the difference between the salary, the brutto salary a woman and a man earns for the same job, and the average value. It's a complicated number, but anyway, it's the average value you see here, the 21% in Germany. That's where we are today. And this gender pay gap will lead in time to a gender-based pension gap, because it's going to get bigger and bigger, and we end up at 46% in Germany. And I have to say, Germany is really an extreme case concerning this gender-based pension gap. Coming now to the second challenge, which I mentioned before, so I explained to you the system we are in. Now coming to the neuroscience, there is a part of neuroscience which is called gender neuroscience, and this field was extremely active in the last years. Since 1990, we had about 5,600 publications in this field, and basically, in order to make it easy, there were two groups of people. One group is saying that the difference between male and female is because of the genes, and the other part of the publication is saying the differences between male and female is the environment, the socialization, the experiences we are making during our life. I have to say, I didn't read all this publication. I read a few of them. There is no final conclusion, so I don't know who's going to. But I brought another example here of another scientist, Professor Madhura Engalhalikar. I hope I spoke out her name well. She has studied in 2014 the sex differences from the perspective of how the brain works. And I believe many of you have seen these pictures. So basically here we have, on the left-hand side of the picture, we have a brain where there are lots of red lines connected between the left and right half of the brain. And the connection is very strong. And on the right-hand side of the picture, we have blue lines, which are connected more in one half of the brain, and some few red lines between the two half of the brains. And here the message is the same, even though it looks that there are big differences based on this picture, but the summary of her study is that the sex differences are smaller than the picture indicate, and basically in a male brain, so we have are structured in a way to facilitate connectivity between perception and coordinated action. And in the female brains is designed to facilitate communication between analytical and interconnection. I will take a short break to make sure that everybody can hear me.
We can hear you.
All right, just to make sure I'm not speaking alone
No.
here.
No, everything is perfect.
All right, then I will keep going. And my last example of female scientist in psychology, Rina Ripan. She's professor in psychology. She introduced the world of so-called neurotrash, where she's saying the behavioral sex difference are not biological. So she's defending the theories of saying that these are all genes. She's saying that these differences reflect how different social experiences in our education and occupation are between male and female. All right. As I said, it's not yet clear which scientific group will win the race, and it's going to be for sure a longer debate. But for me, there is a clear message, and the message is that all our brains, independently of what we are, have female and male characteristics, and this so-called female and male characteristics are something we are defined by language and by our socialization. But basically, we all have them. The question is only in what degree and how much percentage I have from the female or from the male characteristics. And I think, to me, actually, the question is to understand myself better, to know what mixture I have and how I get perceived by my environment. All right. Staying on the side of the neuroscience, I just want to bring in another dimension. Basically, we are all having our limitations in our brains. There are limitations just from the perspective of acceptance of every human being being different than myself. They are all value adds, no doubt about it, but I call them here limitations because they could limit us in being extremely open for people which are very different than we are. And first one are our beliefs, our doctrines, are those beliefs we are learning at very, very young age through the socialization, through family, through environment we grow up with. Then we have our values. In trainings I have, when we talk about values, it's a very, very funny discussion because you see, just to give you an example, in Germany, punctuality is a very, very key value. So you have to be there. If the meeting was scheduled for 4 p.m., you should not be there at 5 minutes before 4 and not 5 minutes after 4. You should be there exactly at 4. For others, punctuality is defined in a different way. So it gets very relative. Then we have the conformity standards. This is one of the hardest parts. Every time I'm working with teams, I'm hearing sentences from managers like saying, "We are doing this since 20 years. Why should we change?" Here, people are in the comfort zone, and yeah, change is always very hard. Then we have the gender roles, which are there, and we are all seeing them every day. We have our experiences during life, and nevertheless, we have about 188, maybe meanwhile more, brain biases, which are very well documented, analyzed by science, and recognized how they work. All this together, and for sure some more elements, but for time purpose, let's stay on these elements, are, oh, sorry, I forgot one more, the verbal and nonverbal communication belongs also to this. All these elements together, they are defining your culturescape, my culturescape, all of our culturescapes, and basically it's the cultural landscape of your environment. And this becomes very interesting at the moment when, just to give an example, a woman from another country out of Germany comes to Germany. She's not only into the conversation, what's the difference between male and female, and how can I get in a tech environment, equality. It's also a question of the cultural landscape of her new environment. So there are some more elements inside there. Coming now to the third challenge, which I mentioned before, the leadership. Here, I'm not going to, for time reason, I'm not going to go into lots of details, but the key message is that nowadays competition is is worldwide, it's global, it's not local anymore, and diversity is competition. We have to accept this. And because diversity is competition, it's, to phrase it differently, diversity is also about the fear of losing privileges, all those which are in the system and have been used of working in a given way. They are afraid of changes because they don't know how many of their existing privileges will still stay or not. So leaders have to, and I have to also add up one more sentence, when you are in a competition, many things can happen. Diverse teams, usually at the beginning when they get formed, they have more challenges than monocultural teams. So there are definitely more conflicts in. So as a manager, as a team lead, or as a leadership person, you have to know yourself very well and you have to know others. This is a key skill, and basically it's about strengthening the social and emotional intelligence in order to be able to recognize where the conflicts are occurring and how can you resolve them in order to come to the advantages of diversity. And here just a simple picture about yourself and the environment you are in. How do you are self-aware of what happens to you? How are you aware of what happens in the environment you are in, and how do you regulate your emotions? How do you think before you act, and how do you drive the environment around yourself and around your team in order to build networks which are strong and are working based on acceptance of different perspectives. Looking at this and coming back to the question, how can we raise our capital, our human capital? And we can raise it as an individual, but also company can raise it if they recognize they have capital inside their company. And basically, yes, we have to identify our inner and outer limitations. They are all there, and we have to find them out, and we have to grow. It's a development step, and I have to say, diversity starts definitely with us. And yeah, I think I'm done with my speech. I have, I think, another 2 slides of what we are doing with Be Cosmopolite. We have top-down and bottom-up approaches. So basically, we work with leaders in order to train them on the skills they need to have in order to be able to lead diverse team and rich inclusion. And we have also the bottom-up approach where we work with individuals. We work a lot also with women. We work a lot with people from underrepresented groups in teaching them how to be aware what's happening and how to get empowered, and how to get into this leadership position, not expecting that the system will change or others will drive the change, but they themselves to go into this leadership position and drive themselves the change by starting their own personal development. And we do all these by gender and diversity business coaching. We have individual sessions, and we do a lot of workshops where we work either with separate individuals in a team or with a complete team in order to make those teams to be inclusive. I think I'm at the end of my speech. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.